Hi and welcome to this week's Mailbox. This is where I go through comments on various platforms, mostly from YouTube, that are worthy of a bit more of a direct answer or a fuller answer, or there might even just be comments that I want to add something to myself as well. The first one is actually via an email. This is from a guild, Eternal Kingdom on Proudmoore US, who say that they have a number of members in their raid team who are affected by Hurricane Harvey and want to do a fundraiser to help. So they are going to be doing a 12-hour stream. I will put the details down below. Just be aware, I don't know this person personally. It's obviously a cause that's worth championing there. But take the usual precautions when donating to things like this, bear in mind. The next one is from Curious Cat. For those who don't know, I've sort of mentioned this last few weeks. Curious Cat is like a tool for asking questions of people. I don't check it every day, I have to say. I've sort of tested it out. At the moment, I just get, a stream. Every now and then I get a bit of a question on this, which I respond to. I do check it a few times a week at least. So the one question from this has been, so for the Nether Crucible, do you feel like it's worth coining for relics that aren't good, as you currently have slotted in the off chance you do get a good trait in the 3rd tier? What I would say, and what I did say to this one, is if you're struggling on what to spend your coins on, I personally find myself doing this a lot, because I'm at the point now where you're well into progress. We've only got a couple of bosses left to do, obviously the hardest 2 bosses. And so now what you're finding is with the other bosses, it's largely farm. You're sort of bringing in a lot of people based on who needs those bosses. So you may not even be on every boss, but at the same time, you get a lot of coins a week. I mean, you get 3 as standard coins that you can spend, and it's not uncommon on a week-by-week basis to either, like this week, for example, we've had the Time Walkers with an extra coin from that. I've also had the mission that's given me an extra coin, the actual Timah Sargeras mission. So you can sometimes, and sometimes one of the Broken Shore buffs, the buildings buffs, can give you extra coins as well. So you can sometimes run into having an awful lot of coins and what to spend them on. So if you've got a surplus of coins and there aren't enough bosses that drop something that as baseline would be a clear upgrade, it can be useful using them on bosses that drop relics that, although not your best, are actually okay, and maybe they'll get your best trait on it as well with the Nether Crucible. Yes, so relic, they're certainly worth storing up at this point for now, until you can see actually what they're like. But yeah, if you have got surplus coins, it is certainly worth using that. It's not probably worth using them on that over things that can give you a clear DPS upgrade in terms of if the baseline version drops, is this an upgrade? Yes, it is, then use it on that. Next one, maybe Illidan is the first Nephilim in the WoW universe. Nephilim is like a spawn of angel and demon. I can sort of see how we would come across that. Doesn't quite fit for me. The thing is, like in the WoW universe, we're sort of now, you'd think to yourself, the angels and demons are Naru and Void Lords. Now, the Naru aspect of Illidan is clear. Zira even talking about Illidan's glowing eyes as being, almost implying that that's a Naru thing, Naru gift. Or at least a gift from the light from, whatever the Naru serve. So there's that element, but of course he had his eyes bored out by Sargeras and given new ones. But remember, Sargeras is not himself aligned with the Void either. In fact, he's very much opposed to it. The actions of Sargeras it's his way of attacking the Void Lords. He's the mortal enemy of them. He's just doing it a different way to the rest of us. So Sargeras remember, he was a Titan, and maybe, we don't know all this yet, this is all sort of stuff that's pure speculation, maybe if the Titans themselves are themselves the creations of the light, not necessarily the Naru, but whoever the Naru serve, we can call it the light, as opposed to the Void, then, Sargeras didn't change from that point of view. He just changed his attitude, the way he wants to attack the Void. So I don't think it is that sort of fusion there. Even though in terms of looks, you clearly see he's got very demonic features, but they're really Sargeran or Sargerite features, if you would call it that. In my opinion anyway. Obviously all of this is just pure speculation. It could be anything. Next one, about the video I did yesterday on the gender balance of Timah, I guess, which was meant to be nothing more than just a curious, oh my God, we've never seen this before. Someone said here, you can't, there's an awful lot of comments, by the way, it's a good read. You can't make gender observations for fun. YouTube commentators have decreed it so. And then the next one, you are treading dangerous waters. Well, that last one's not such a problem. We've been doing that on Mistress of Scene for ages. So I'm well used to treading dangerous waters. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line is I don't care. It's not in itself a disrespectful piece. I said quite clearly from the beginning, it didn't carry a serious message. It was just an observation, bit of fun. And also, you know, I'm not insulting anyone in it or anything like that. So if anyone wants to go too far with it, that's up to them. I don't give a monkeys. Next one. This is to do now. Obviously, one of the big events this week has been the cinematic between Illidan and Zira. So there's obviously going to be a few questions on this. Now, one person here has said, in terms of my response to it, it says, I think you overcomplicate. What we see is just another confirmation of Illidan being a unpleasant person. Should we substitute that? Which is very baffling. It's like, in what way is Illidan being unpleasant? Someone is literally tying his hands behind his back and forcing him to undergo cosmetic surgery. If you were to resist, including kicking out at that point, would that be you behaving unpleasantly? I don't think so. I don't think so. And then it says here, almost everyone on YouTube says that Zira is a baddie because it shouldn't have forced Illidan to accept the gift. I think what you're forgetting is the Naru is not human, so you can't apply human categories to evaluate decision making. Now, I don't agree with that. Well, first of all, in terms of those assembled there, if we don't include ourselves, you've got Zira, okay, Naru, not human. You've got Illidan, not human. You've got Illyria, not human. You've got Velna. In fact, the only human there was Turalyon, and he was very much in favour of what Zira was doing. Sorry, just a bit of semantics. But no, that doesn't really wash. There's two things why. One thing you may be missing, and it's easily missed, by the way, I missed it first time round, is before that cinematic, Illyria and Turalyon are talking about the fact that Zira imprisoned Illyria. Imprisoned her. Basically punishing her for something that Zira didn't like, even though Illyria wasn't doing anything wrong. So Blizzard are quite clearly, not only in the dialogue between Illyria and Turalyon, but also in that cinematic, showing a darker side is not really appropriate as a term to use, but in the terms that we would understand it, aggressive, malevolent side to the Naru, forceful, in a way that we haven't seen before. Blizzard are very clearly giving this impression. This is not overcomplicating it at all. And as I say, to sort of say, oh, you can't apply it because they're a different being or a higher being. That's a bit like us torturing a dog. You know, when you see on thing mistreatment of dogs or something like that, some police or animal protection charities go into someone's house and you've got the mistreatment of animals. You know, the person who's got them can't just say, I'm a higher being, I've got my own reasons. That doesn't wash, and it doesn't wash here either. Next one, it says, regarding Turalyon's eye colour, so what happened in the video here is it sort of, like goes a bit more gold, and then when Zira is destroyed, for want of a better word, the hue goes away. I talked about in the video, of course, it could just be the reflection of Zira's radiance that then goes away when she's shattered. So I mentioned that one myself, but it just says here, regarding Turalyon's eye colour, they are a reflection of Zira's light. You can see them turn from brown to gold when Zira is first revived. Yes, indeed. And that's what I sort of said. It could just be the light there, the radiance there. But here's the thing, and this is what other people have noted as well. To say it's as simple as, oh, it's just a reflection of the light that then goes out when Zira is killed, isn't quite enough, because there's other people there as well. There's Velen and Illyria. And there's no glow in their eyes, only Turalyon's. And it doesn't even matter that, well, that's because Turalyon has got sort of orangish eyes to begin with, because everyone's eyes are sort of reflective. So no, there is something, they're trying to give an impression of something different with Turalyon there. Again, it's a subtle thing. That's much more subtle than the Zira's attitude thing. But the fact that it's not reflected in Velen and Illyria's eyes as well is telling. There is something there. Next one. Yes, this was just about this video in general. It says, I've already seen it, but there are lots of folks who haven't. You and every other YouTuber putting that exact scene as your thumbnail is kind of a huge spoiler. Just saying, not cool. It's not a spoiler. If it's in the game, doesn't matter whether you've done it or not, it's not a spoiler. Am I to do no videos with no spoilers? Sorry, no spoilers, behave yourself. With no thumbnails? Because any thumbnail you can imagine, any World of Warcraft thumbnail is a spoiler for someone who hasn't played the game yet. What about someone who's played the game for the first time today? And then looking stuff on YouTube. Am I spoiling them? It's not. It's in the game. It's there. Whether people have done it yet or not is irrelevant. The other thing I would say is that that video, with that title, by the way, because that's not my title, that's Blizzard's title. They themselves already put the video out before I did this. And it's pretty clear what that was. So, yeah. So it's not a spoiler. A spoiler is something that isn't in the game yet. Something you're getting, say, from... that hasn't been published directly from Blizzard. It might be content that is in the PTR or an alpha or a beta. But as soon as Blizzard announce something, then it is no longer a spoiler. I mean, you can argue about the definition of that as long as you like, but it's not. And the community knows it's not. I'm not, as you noted there, I'm not the only person doing that. We are, I think, fairly responsible YouTubers. If something is a spoiler, we'll put it in the content and try not to be too direct with thumbnails. But I do pride myself that my thumbnails tell you exactly what something is about. I don't do clickbait or anything like that. So I also need my thumbnail to be clear. And as other people have noted as well in comments, if you're actually actively searching for YouTube videos on YouTube, you are generally speaking not the sort of person that is worried about. If you're going to look at a video that's about a storyline, you're not someone who's averse to spoilers. Next one. So it says here, I don't think there'll be any raid after Argus, after hearing all the interviews from GameCon. Ian says there's not likely to be any raid, but more story to tell in an interview. He didn't actually say that. He didn't say that. What he said, and what I and others picked up on, he said there would be no more large raid. He also said there would be no Ruby Sanctum type raid. So large raid means like the 9 or 10 bosses or more that we have at the moment. Ruby Sanctum type raid is like your, well, one boss rubbish, but it doesn't preclude the other ones. Now, of course, it doesn't say that there's going to be another one because he hasn't said there's going to be another one. But here's the thing. If there wasn't going to be another one, he would just say, no, there's no more raids. The other thing is you've got to think about the timing of all this. If the 77-day thing still holds, then you would expect Antorus, the Burning Throne, to go live mid-November. Blizzard have said, and they've stuck to this all through Legion, that they expect raid tiers to last 4 to 5 months. Now, let's go to the upper end of that and say 5 months. So that say they're expecting Antorus to last from mid-November to mid-December, January, February, March, April, mid-April. Now, they have to avoid a content drought at the end of this expansion. Absolutely crucial to them. It doesn't matter how good the content has been, or more specifically, because people can argue all day and all night about how good the content is, but the fact that it's been varied and frequently brought out, new content brought out, doesn't matter how good that is. If there's a year or an extended period of time between that last raid and the new expansion coming out, they're in hot water. Now, the absolute earliest they can possibly bring out the new expansion is next September, and that's earliest. The longer they delay the announcement of it, remember, until they announce it, they can't really open up the open alpha, and that's the period when it really gets tested. You know, there's obviously lots of testing going on already, but until they really open it out, that's when it's properly tested. And people start talking about it and the community starts getting involved, and that's when Blizzard can start making actual decisions and refining things and all the rest of it. What the game, any expansion, you know, from what it starts out at the beginning of that open testing process to the end product, there's a world of difference. It goes through so many stages of development, even given that some things are held back. Now, they opened up the open alpha for Legion in like December, and it came out in September, so it's 10 months of open testing. But really, no, 9 months, sorry, because it came out right at the end of August. Not even that, really. So about 9 months. A nice human gestation period. So if, let's say, the same thing happens, because let's say they announce it at BlizzCon, which is end of October, and they start opening the alpha up maybe a month later, it's still going to be, and they're not going to bring it out in the middle of summer. They don't bring anything out in the middle of summer, because that's what I'm always moaning about. So, you know, September at the earliest. So if the raid comes out in mid-November, that's about 10 months before the next expansion comes out. People aren't going to be happy with that. And it doesn't matter. And obviously, you know, we're all understanding here. There'll still be content brought out. There'll still be more content. But what's that content going to be? More world quests? Another new zone? Another new raid? Dungeon? Scenarios, that sort of stuff. All that's fine and dandy. People are all right with that. But that's exactly the sort of content people consume really quickly. You look at the Argus zones that have opened up already, the 2 zones there. People who've gone in there have already done them. They did them quite quickly. That sort of content can't hold you for very long. As much as we might enjoy it, it only lasts so long. What's there keeping us going back day after day? The world quests. Simple as that. Next week, it'll be the invasions. Another zone opens up another storyline. That sort of content does not hold people. The only content that holds people is progress stuff, and that's the raid. That is the only sort of content that holds. And not everyone raids, fair enough, but that is the content that people see as having any lasting value. So there has to be another one. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, they will be accused, whether you think fairly or not, of a 10-month content drought. How is this different from any other expansion from the last few expansions? So, yeah, there has to be. And as I say, why, if there wasn't going to be one, why not just say, why say, oh, there's not going to be another large one, or there's, he could even have just said, we'll see. He didn't. He specifically said, no more large one, no more single boss one, which basically means a trial of valor type one. Next one, it says the artifact power in weekly chests wouldn't work. It would annoy all of the hardcore PvPers and they'd leave. Never going to happen. Well, it may never happen, but that's a different story. Hardcore PvPers and they would leave. So my idea, for example, with the artifact power one, was that for dungeons and raids, you don't get them off bosses. You get them in the weekly cache based on what you've done. I really don't understand how that would annoy hardcore PvPers. Because it would mean they'd have to... The whole point of it is it prevents you having to farm Mythic Plus dungeons over and over again. Unless you want to do it for loot. I have no idea how that would annoy hardcore PvPers. I'm not a PvPer myself, but I would be curious to know the answer to that one. Because that sounds to me extremely curious. But just in general, hardcore players in general are the ones who most like this. Because they tend to be the ones that play on multiple characters. And having to run dungeons over and over and over again. Let's face facts. It's not anything that requires skill. It requires you to have time to do nothing else. It requires you to have no other responsibilities in life. That's the bottom line. And for hardcore players who may well still play the game full time, but they have to do it on lots of characters, so the same sort of thing applies. And actually, it's put off an awful lot of hardcore players. Next one is about the Nether Crucible. So this is based on the guide I did on 7.3. It says, so how do I get the shadow part of the forge for the weapons? Easy. You log in next week and do those quests. So what you'll notice is if you've done the quest lines on Argus so far, there was a particular part where you gathered up Zira's bits. I shudder to think which bits. And then you infuse the Nether Crucible with it. On the right-hand side, there's a nice glowing light type effect. On the other side, there will be a shadow effect, all part of this balance thing. You do that as part of the quests on, what is it called, Macquarie, the 3rd zone, which isn't open at the moment, but will be open next week. Whereupon, there'll be a number of little puzzles to solve, the most difficult of which That's actually, this is annoying. I was going to do a video on this and I didn't. But just to tell you in advance, hopefully this isn't a spoiler. It's not a storyline spoiler, it's to do with how to do a quest. There's a particular quest where you have 3 coloured lights and you're supposed to combine them to make different colours and therefore solve the puzzle. Now, as a physicist, I have to point out that these are supposed to be like lights, you know, colours of light that you're mixing together. But it doesn't work that way. It works more like paint. So think in terms of paint. So like with paint, for example, when you mix blue and yellow, you get green. Whereas with light, you know, to get green, green is a primary colour, you know. So, Blizzard. But anyway, never mind. You'll work it out. You just think of it. It's based on paint and not light. But yeah, so it's next week. And then when you get that and it's all done and dusted and you're going, right, okay, we should be able to activate it now. That's the point at which Velen goes, wait till next reset. Or he won't actually go that, but that's what will happen. So then you'll just, if you've done all those quests, then in the 3rd week, which is the reset after next, you will just be able to go there and start looking at how worthless your relics are. But it doesn't matter, because for most of us, our artifact level will still be significantly behind. Remember, you've got to get it up to at least 69 to unlock any of the extra relics. Or traits, I should say, traits. Because we do get to obviously unlock the item level no matter what artifact level you're at. And you get to unlock the bottom row as early as 60 on one of your relics and 66 on the last of them. And then the last question. This is to do with the next expansion. Do you reckon they'd give us the artifact ability as a new spell full stop, or as an option out of 3 talents for the 115 talent slot? 150. Have they said that there's just going to be 5 levels in the next expansion? I don't think they said anything about the next expansion. That might be an assumption there. Although I don't know, I wish they would scale back the old levels. There's also no suggestion there's going to be a new talent row. But of course, that could be. But in simple answer to the question, no. I think they will just make it a baseline ability. The reason for that, I haven't by any means played all the specs in Legion. I played a few. And for some of those specs, including my own, the artifact ability is so integral to the play style that you can't simply make it a talent. For some of them, you get the impression that maybe they could do without it. It's like maybe you could make it a talent. But for some of them, the abilities, yeah, they're so much part of the overall rotation. Without it, it would play completely different. Now, I know, of course, you know, if it's an ability that isn't an integral part of it, yeah, you could make it a talent. You could balance the class around the fact it doesn't have it as baseline. Because there's always going to be some balancing of abilities anyway in a new expansion, even if you keep the abilities largely the same. But for some of them, you would have to do more than just simply balance it all out. The whole thing would just come... It's like a house of cards. It's a bit like someone going, oh, no, I need the Ace of Diamonds. Actually, take the whole thing away, and it'll all just collapse. So, yeah, I think it will just be made a baseline new ability, at least for those classes for which it is an integral part. The problem is, of course, if they make it baseline only for so many specs and then not the others, and the others might be thinking, well, I quite liked mine. It might not have been essential, but I did quite like it. Why shouldn't I have mine baseline? So I strongly suspect they will just make them all baseline for that point of view. So there you go. Those are the questions from this week. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.